In the 1979 Apple II reference manual, on pages 179 to 180, the most thrilling thing to start a video about, it gives these following definitions. A hardware bug is a physical or electrical malfunction or design error. A software bug is an error in programming, either in the logic of the program or typographical in nature. See feature. Feature. A bug as described by the marketing department. This is one of the earliest recorded instances I could find relating to the programming phrase, "It's not a bug, it's a feature." An adage that has been repeated in some way or another by developers for decades. It was used by Shigeru Miyamoto when talking about the miner's world in the original Super Mario Bros. Game designer Akira Nishitani paraphrased it when discussing how Street Fighter II had inadvertently introduced move canceling and combos in fighting games. Additionally, many more game mechanics were developed by accidental bugs, such as Devil May Cry's combat juggling, the spy from Team Fortress 2, and the flying cars from Rocket League. Even Taito's Space Invaders' main mechanic of enemies becoming faster as the player progresses was just the result of the game running smoother when enemies are unloaded, making it one of the first games to introduce flow, a balance between difficulty and skill, evaluated in the 1970s by that guy. Now, supposedly the earliest documented case of using bug and feature interchangeably was by Sandy Mays when doing test results for the PDP-8 between 1969 and 1972. However, no resource of that exists, and after reading through the entire PDP-8 test documents because I have no social life, I couldn't find evidence that Sandra Mays even exists. The phrase may also have its first written history back in 1975, when Stanford student Raphael Finkel began writing down definitions for tech jargon. The file, referred to as Jargon 1, was copied and added onto by various other programmers until Guy Steele published it in 1983 under the title of the Hacker's Dictionary, later renamed to the Jargon file. It provides a definition for the phrase as well as a similar definition for feature. There is a changelog, but it does not document who added the definition or when. So it may have been Finkel in 1975 or one of the other contributors. Guy Steele of MIT in 1976, Don Woods and Mark Crispin also in 76, and Richard Stallman of MIT around 1983. But like many other phrases printed in the jargon file, the origin of the phrase could date back as far as the 1950s. The earliest instance I could find in relation to video games, however, is with Mattel's 1981 Intellivision game Space Hawk. Programmer Bill Fisher was given a copy of Asteroids and told to modify it enough to be legally distinct, the best kind of distinct. During development, he discovered that the character would randomly enter hyperspace, despite the player not pressing the designated button. This had to do with the Intellivision controller reading a side button press and a disk direction at the same time as a numeric input, in this case being 9, the hyperspace button. As any programmer does, Bill decided to do nothing about the problem.
Don't care.
Instead adding the following to the game's instruction manual. Every once in a while, your space hunter will move near a black hole, and the computer will automatically put him into hyperspace. This will cost you the same number of points if you had pressed the hyperspace key yourself. On the other hand, it will save your hunter. In reality, there was no black hole.
It's fiction. We made it up.
This supposedly led to an inside joke amongst Mattel developers that, if you document it, it's not a bug, it's a feature. So now we get to the actual point that I want to discuss, and that is, when is it okay for developers to leave in bugs and glitches?
That's insane! That's a bug! That's a bug!
The biggest factor to look at is that glitches are typically viewed as a form of cheating, as they intentionally or not break the rules of the game world. But first, we have to look at why we cheat in video games. Dr. Mia Consalvo has written several papers focusing on the psychology of playing games, and specifically cheating. She categorizes cheating into 3 loosely defined categories. First is anything except my own thoughts. The purest form of player that refuses to so much as look at walkthroughs or guidebooks, as cheating the game more so means cheating themselves out of the satisfaction of beating the game or solving a puzzle by themselves. Next is code is law. Cheating, whether it be through actually implemented cheat code screens, dev consoles, or changing source code, is all prohibited. And lastly, you can only cheat another player. All cheating is fine as long as it doesn't affect another real-world player. Consalvo then explains the 4 major reasons given for cheating by her focus groups. 1. Because I was stuck. Players cheat because they cannot advance through the game due to their skill level, the game's difficulty, a stupid bullshit puzzle, or some other obstacle. 2. It's fun to play God. Players cheat because breaking the system and becoming unstoppable is more fun than the challenges the game offers.
Yeah! I have the power of God!
3. Hitting fast forward. Players cheat so as to play through the game faster, speed through boring parts, or to skip certain sections entirely. Number 4. Being an ass. Your parents either beat you too much or not enough. One reason given from the papers reads, "Sometimes I just feel like being a jerk online and will use cheat programs. Tim32." Go fuck yourself, Tim32.
No-life nerd who's never gotten pussy before in his entire life.
The reasons given in Consalvo's paper can also coincide into why we play video games in the first place. One of the most cited references of player psychology and why people play games for fun is the 4 Bartle types, coined by multi-user dungeon co-creator Richard A. Bartle in his 1996 paper, Hearts, Clubs, Diamonds, Spades, Players Who Suit Muds. Keep in mind that Bartle's graph does not and should not be used for every game, and is just meant for broadly defining types of players, and that you should watch his talk on uses and abuses for the system. Bartle's graph is split vertically by action and interaction. Horizontally, it is based on player and world. He divides these into 4 quadrants. Achievers, players whose main goal is to continually get better times, points, levels, etc. Explorers, players who try to discover all that a game has to offer and understand all the underlying systems. Socializers, those interested in the community surrounding a game, the social aspects, and the story or lore of a game. And finally, killers. People who try to cause as much chaos that they can in the game world, or become as overpowered as possible. We could categorize that players cheat so as to fulfill one of these playstyles to the extreme. So you can put aimbots, wall hackers, and other glue eaters in the killer section, out of bounds and sequence breaks in the explorer section, glitch hunting communities in the socializer section, and speedrunners in the achiever section. There's obviously always been contention over glitches and cheating in games, even amongst publishers. Nintendo believed that cheats undermined their games so much that they attempted to sue Galoob, the creators of the Game Genie, for spoiling the market and shortening the lives of their games. Although, it was found that products such as the Game Genie actually caused the opposite and helped prolong the life of a game, according to the paper Cheating in Video Games, Causes and Some Consequences by Jean-Christophe Geiger and him.
You cast them aside, exiled to the closet. Rescue them. Get most of your old video games out of the closet and play them like new with Game Genie. Jump higher, change level.
Geiger's paper also found that there was no strong correlation with cheating in games making someone cheat in other aspects of their life. Consalvo's original paper concludes with the following statement: cheating isn't just about subverting the game system, it's also about augmenting the system. It's a way for individuals to keep playing through their boredom, through difficulty, through limited scenarios, and through rough patches or just bad games. Cheating, or however these activities might be differently defined, constitutes players asserting agency, taking control of their game experience. It is also players going beyond the expected activity in the game. And I think that's an important topic for this video: developer and player authorship. Video games are probably one of the most special but most hard to define forms of art because of their interactive nature. Cheating is almost exclusive to video games over all other forms of art. And being an interactive medium means that players share authorship alongside the actual creators. Sure, you could rip the pages out of a book and read it in any order, or watch a movie without the middle parts, but most people would say that you didn't really experience it, as you went against the creator's intentions. Even things like paintings allow for the audience to craft their own interpretations, but they can usually do so without them tearing it apart. Breaking a video game, or skipping entire levels, however, is more contested, with what is okay and to what degree being subjective to every game and person. I think one of the most important factors in deciding whether a glitch should be kept or removed is the difference between the intent of the creator and the enjoyment of the audience. First, we have to go back to one of the longest running exploits in gaming, the rocket jump. Rocket jumping made its first appearance in 1993's Doom. In the level E3M6, Players can shoot a rocket at a nearby wall to send themselves blasting back into the secret exit. While there are other ways to enter the level, rocket jumping was the intended method by designer John Romero. Rocket jumping would gain further popularity in games such as Quake and Team Fortress 2, with a focus on vertical movement. While this does give players greatly expanded mobility, it is balanced by players having to ration off their ammo and health. Quake would also introduce strafe jumping, another accidental bug. This oversight allowed players to break past the speed cap set by the developers. Written in the source code of Quake 3, it is actually acknowledged by one of the devs that removing it just didn't feel right. This also led to an advanced form of strafe jumping called bunny hopping, which programmer John Carmack has been vocally against. In id Software's Finger Service emails, Carmack writes the following. I don't know what John Carmack sounds like, so I'm just gonna do what I think he sounds like. Lots of hate mail from strafe jumpers. Some reasonable messages have convinced me that a single immediate jump after landing may be important to gameplay. I'll experiment with it. Strafe jumping is an exploitable bug. Just because people have practiced hard to allow themselves to take advantage of it does not justify its existence. When I tried fixing the code so it just didn't work, I thought it changed the normal running movement in an unfortunate way. In the absence of power-ups or level features, wind tunnels, jump pads, etc., the game characters are supposed to be badasses with big guns. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sigourney Weaver don't get down a hallway by hopping like a bunny rabbit. This is a personal preference, but when I play online, I enjoy it more when people are running and dodging, rather than hopping. My personal preference just counts a lot. Carmack's complaints show the clash between artistic vision and player enjoyment, and the larger issue of games as both art and entertainment. This brings us to the next point, mechanical and narrative cohesion. Many developers implement mechanics because they want to reinforce a certain overall tone or narrative theme. Take the game Papers, Please, for example. Whoa, wow, gee, a video talking about mechanics and narrative talking about Papers, Please? I would have never guessed. The game has players working border control to try and make as much money as they can to support their family. The harsh difficulty of the game gives Papers, Please its identity, and gives weight to your moral choices. It is constantly tempting you to go against your ethics with the promise of extra money that you will need. But imagine if you had discovered an infinite money or infinite time glitch. Yes, that would make the game easier, less stress-inducing, and more fun for some, but it would also undermine a lot of the core themes of Papers, Please. When the story is built on the top of the game's mechanics, and the mechanics break, the story falls apart too. On the other hand, games are supposed to be entertainment with the goal of letting players have fun. If they go against your idea of what fun is, but are still having fun, then that's all that should matter, right?
If it's not fun, why bother?
In the 4th generation of Pokemon, the best one, the cute charm glitch can raise shiny appearances from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 5. This is all based on manipulating the random number generator for creating your secret ID and your trainer ID. Now, I didn't use external software and they're all considered legal, so it's not really cheating. On one hand, I robbed myself of the experience of randomly finding a special Pokemon and trying to catch it, the entire reason the developers implemented shinies in the first place. On the other hand, a team of shiny Marios was pretty fun too. But in opposition of Carmack's original views on bee-hopping and unintended mechanics, it greatly increases the skill ceiling for speedrunning and competitive play. The former being a cornerstone of Carmack's previously released Doom, one of the earliest speedrunning games. This leads to my next topic, bugs and glitches in competitive play. One of Super Smash Bros. Melee's defining maneuvers is the wave dash. Wave dashing is done by performing a directional air dodge towards the ground, keeping the character's momentum and sliding relative to their friction. This drastically increases the skill ceiling of the game, being used for movement, ledge camping, retreating, mind games, and offensive play. It's an exploit that has defined the competitive scene. So why is a glitch like wave dashing seen as a staple of Melee, while exploits such as the freeze and wobbling are outright banned? The main difference is that while wave dashing does have practical uses, it does not guarantee a victory. It takes considerable practice to pull off and even longer to use it in any meaningful way. Additionally, it drastically increases the skill ceiling needed for the game and leads to a much more interesting sport for players and spectators alike. On the opposite end of the spectrum, wobbling takes little skill to execute, almost always ensures a win, can only be performed by one character in the roster, or two, and makes the game unfun to play and watch. While the exploit does have its shortcomings, turning matches into boring match fests. What's important is whether or not these glitches keep the overall spirit of the game intact or enhance it in some way. But again, we have to look at what the creators and what the players believe the spirit of the game even is. Series creator Masahiro Sakurai stated in volume 228 of Nintendo Power that he removed wave dashing in Brawl because the growing skill gap was at odds with his vision of a game that anyone could pick up and enjoy. Sakurai's main goal has been to make a game that is first and foremost fun, rather than competitive. But much like hearing their father say they're proud of them, having fun is something that no Melee player has ever experienced.
It's really nervous.
I absolutely agree.
Oh, that's a controller break.
That's unfortunate. We're gonna...
It bounced
Yes.
onto the table.
Yes.
This argument doesn't really have a definitive answer because what is fun is completely subjective to everyone, and you can't just tell them that their version of fun is wrong unless they're a League of Legends player. But ultimately, I think that the reason Melee is still played so much nearly 2 decades later is because of these glitches. This leads into another important factor, looking at how glitches impact the community surrounding a game. In Demon Souls, players are able to skip a majority of the Shrine of Storms by rolling over a certain ledge. Supposedly, the game's director Hidetaka Miyazaki was okay with players using this exploit, as they were able to find it on their own and it has become part of the community, a big factor of the Souls series. Now, take that with a grain of salt, as every source that mentions this story never cites the Japanese interview it was taken from, so this might be entirely misassociated, but it fits my personal narrative, so I'm keeping it. A key aspect of the Souls series is based on its community, with mechanics such as summons and messages to help other players. So exploits like this help strengthen the community and make the game easier for players. Contrast this to things like strength hacks that completely unbalance PvP combat and just ruin the online component for everyone. Glitches are also important in the world of speedrunning and can actually help strengthen the community around a game.
I was thinking about why so many in the radical left participate in speedrunning. The reason is the left's lack of work ethic, go fast rather than do it right. And in a Petersonian sense,
Beautiful creatures were on sale. Notice their shape.
to elevate alternative sexual archetypes in the marketplace. Fastest merrier. The answer, obvious if you think about it. The goal is illusion of speed. The desire, Sir Francis, to promote radical leftist, modern, communist ideals of how easy work is.
Socialism is when the government does.
Your mom! Think about the basically automated luxury communism in
What's going on with you? What are you talking about? You sound insane.
For example, speedrunners of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker had spent over 15 years attempting to skip past the barrier into Hyrule. This had an entire community of people come together to glitch hunt and communicate with each other to learn the ins and outs of the game. Instead of glitches or exploits ruining a community by making the game unbalanced or unfun to play, breaking the game had created a stronger bond in the player base. I don't think that players would be talking quite as much about Wind Waker a decade after release without a community of glitch hunters and speedrunners. Another key part of bugs and glitches is player expression. As Consolvo mentioned, they allow for players to break away from the author's intended course and give the power back to the player. If a designer asks you to complete a task, how the player achieves it should be irrelevant. Deus Ex creator Warren Spector, in his postmortem GDC talk, discusses how games are best suited for problem solving over puzzle solving. Puzzles typically have very definitive solutions authored by the developers, while problems are open to any solution as long as the task is completed. Problems are about looking for any answer, while puzzles are about looking for the answer. Spector notes how even using exploits such as lamb ladders was fair, as it was still in the realm of the simulation.
It was very frustrating. But then, once people buy your game, it's their game, so you can't be too upset about that.
This design mentality allows players to demonstrate their knowledge of the game's mechanics and create solutions that are almost entirely unique to them. Look up walkthroughs for the Secret Stairway Shrine for Breath of the Wild, and you're bound to find that every article probably has a different solution. To certain extents, games should be able to say yes to the player when they show that they understand the game's mechanics, sometimes even better than the developers.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of they could have fixed that.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things of like saying yes to the player, improvise this interesting thing, and it worked. And they feel like they're getting away with something. You know,
Yeah.
they're exploiting the game systems.
It's not like we ever showed even the first game without one of the first questions being, hey, doesn't it break the game? We like to break the game. Basically, if you can use that power to eliminate everyone, well, that's your expression of that power.
So yeah, we have those oh shit moments where we're like, do we fix this? Do we bulletproof against it? Or do we support it?
As we always say, we try to say yes to the player. It's like a mantra here, you know, say yes to the player. And even if it's a bit stupid, say yes.
So I think that these are the main questions you should ask yourself when considering whether or not to keep a bug. There's probably a lot more, and every developer is going to weigh these choices differently based on what kind of game they're making, but I think these are the most common. 1. Does the glitch increase the skill ceiling and open up high-level play? 2. Does it give players too high of an advantage? 3. Does it spoil competitive play with actual rewards at stake? 4. Does it undermine the core tone the game is trying to achieve too much? 5. Does it hurt or strengthen the community, players, and/or viewers? 6. How often does this glitch occur and how drastic is it? And 7. Is it balanced by taking a considerable amount of setup or skill to achieve, and therefore won't be seen by the average player? I know this video doesn't give a lot of definitive answers, and neither did a lot of the resources that I pulled from when making this. But I think that it just shows how difficult it is to try and examine random mishaps in games that everyone is going to respond to differently. So, in conclusion, go fuck yourself, Tim32.